Has impeachment helped or hindered Donald Trump's re-election campaign, and should we care?
Do you care, Tanya?
I do care, yes.
And what's your view? I
think it has helped. It has helped. It kind of plays into the idea of him versus them for his voters.
And what makes you care about it? Why do you think we should care here?
Because I think it probably devalues the impeachment. I mean, that wasn't the purpose of what it was meant to be. And if it can be used like this as a political tool, what does that mean kind of going forward?
OK. Adam, what's your view on this?
I think anything you throw at Donald Trump at this point just isn't going to stick. I think at this point he's a mud monster, and just throwing more mud at him or make him stronger. I've got no idea how he survived impeachment. Like, none.
Well,
none
it's the number of Republicans in the Senate, I think, is how he survived it. It was just a numbers game in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess that's true, but it's just, I don't know, it's just giving him more press and more momentum going into the re-election that's happening. And it's just really baffling to me. I don't know how he got in the first place, even.
And do you think it matters to us here?
Well, we're going to be negotiating with whoever wins this 2020 election on a trade deal. And back in April, Barack Obama said it could take up to 10 years to negotiate a successful trade deal with the US. And there's been research done that on average, any country entering trade negotiations with the US on average takes 5 years.
I mean, Donald Trump is much more bullish about it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more than likely going to be more than that. It's like 1.5 years negotiating, 3.5 implementation. And so, yeah, I think it does matter. I think the individual in the White House that we are negotiating with, once we leave the EU properly at the end of December, absolutely matters to our country.
Okay. Ed? Sorry. I'll just come to Ed, and then I'll come to you, Rachel.
I think it may have improved his re-election chances, and I deeply regret that, because we should care about it, because this man in the White House is one of the biggest blocks to action on things like climate change. This man in the White House has actually, with his foreign policy, created great instability in places like North Korea and the Middle East. As a progressive politician, I find his approach to women, to Muslims, to Mexicans, quite outrageous. I hope he loses in November. I think that would be a real step forward for the world and for those of us who care about the rights of ordinary people.
Do you think that's likely, then? Ed?
I think it's very difficult to tell at the moment. We're still trying to see who the Democrat choice for president is. I hope they choose someone who can beat Donald Trump, because that's in the interest of everyone in the rest of the world.
Rachel?
Well, it might have helped him, but it was still the right thing to do. You know, because he did abuse the power of his office, and it was corrupt. So the Democrats were right to pursue it. I don't think they could have ignored it. But what we saw just now, that was not a trial with the Senate. A trial with no witnesses and no documentation. And they had John Bolton, the Republican, willing to testify, saying, hey, by the way, I want to testify. I've got something to say about this.
But another way of looking at it is that is their system. And they went along with their system, and this is the result that you get.
Well, they went along with their system, and I think that is to their shame. The fact that they were prepared to have a trial that wasn't a trial, I think everybody can see that. Everybody can see what happened there. And does it matter? Yes, of course it does. I mean, I think for, you know, people who are progressives, leftists or liberals, there aren't that many reasons to be cheerful right now globally. And so we are all watching the US election, you know, and kind of willing the Democrats to just get it together and win this time.
The man here at the front in the purple tie.
Yeah, we can say that's the system, but we're also dependent on the integrity of the individuals. Donald Trump did abuse his office in the way that he was accused of. Mitt Romney recognised that, and with some integrity, voted for impeachment. And the rest of the Republicans said, in effect, yes, he may be a bully, but he's our bully. He's our side, he's on our side, so we're going to support him. That's what's going on.
Yeah. Woman in the green dress, or green top.
I'm worried that our Prime Minister is beginning to resemble the man in the White House in his treatment of minorities, but also press freedom. and how he treated journalists the other day and refused them entry into a briefing.
Right.
Absolutely right.
We've actually got, we may come on to that. I know that's the thing a number of you have talked about. Let's just stick with Donald Trump for a moment. Stella, has the impeachment helped or hindered his campaign? Should we care?
Yeah, I think we should care because when you normalise politics without rules, it has consequences for making it look more acceptable in other parts of the world. I mean, I think you're right, sir. Who would have thought a couple of years ago that Mitt Romney would appear to be a kind of progressive hero? But he did the right thing. He said what he thought was right, and he will take the consequences in the Republican movement. We are in a politics right now. There are very many tactics of American politics that are being imported into British politics in terms of how people campaign, in terms of people's arguments about whether experts and expertise matter. I think we should all be worried because it is driven in America so much by money. It's not driven by democracy. And actually, we're seeing that in the Democrat movement as well. What I worry about is that once somebody has been able essentially to get away with it once, why not do it again? And why not then in this country start saying, well, you know what, actually, if in America people don't accept having all the press there and the difficult press scrutiny, why not do that here? If it's okay to, you know, not have clarity about what you're doing with your Russian oligarchs in America, why not do that in the UK? It becomes a very slippery slope. All of us as politicians should always be slightly uncomfortable that we're being scrutinised. That is a good thing. I don't think that Donald Trump feels that tonight, and that is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Robert? Let's hear your view. Let's hear the government view.
Well, I think I do agree with Stella about the sense of discomfort. I think that's absolutely the place that all of us need to be. And the great thing about our system is that, you know, I can't sit in an ivory tower. I have to come and answer to colleagues at questions and indeed to make statements and be held accountable upon that. I think, whilst I'm not going to get into the weeds of the American campaign, I think their system is, shall we say, a rather interesting one in that, in a genuine attempt to try and get separation of powers right, the executive power of the president does mean that he or she is rather remote, I think, from what goes on day to day on the Hill. But what has happened in American politics is that the tradition of working across the aisle, which was a huge part of the United States Senate for most of its history, has gone. We've heard about Mitt Romney. He is a real throwback to a past that is within living memory of many of us, when the great men and women of the Senate actually put their hands across the aisle and worked together for the United States of America. Now, that has vanished. And the lesson, I think, for us is this. You know, in all the partisan hurly-burly that we've had over the last few years, I think all of us need to look in the mirror as politicians here in the UK and remember that there is so much that unites us. We are all trying to get to the same goal. We might disagree about the means by which we do it, but we are and should be men and women of honour and, yes, trust. Now, that's been a really difficult thing for a lot of people recently. And that sense of discomfort is what I think we need to hold on to as we learn the lessons of some of the extreme politics that we're seeing, not just in the USA, but also closer to home.
Do you feel that sense of discomfort in terms of doing a deal with Donald Trump, then? Do you feel there's some discomfort about what you've just witnessed today with the impeachment?
The government has shown its independence of mind on issues like Huawei. We are far from assuming the position of supplicant or
No, I'm not suggesting. I just wanted to felt discomfort, that was all.
Look, you have to deal with the President of the United States, whoever they happen to be, and the office is the office. Now, you know, I've got my personal views, but as a representative of the government...
let's hear them. Come on. We want to hear those, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? Come on, Robert, cards on the table. What are your personal views?
Do you feel any discomfort about Donald Trump and Boris Johnson being so
hang on.
Well, look, I think apart from the hair colour, I do not see that much, communality between a classical scholar...
What are you saying? Boris Johnson and Donald Trump have got the same hair colour. I think Boris Johnson might have a word with you about that.
I'm sorry, I do think that some easy comparisons are made which actually are not borne out by the evidence. What I want to see in the United States is the Democratic Party organising its caucuses efficiently so that we know what the results are going to be, and that the candidate who they produce will provide a proper contest rather than something that will be a rollover. I mean, Trump has confounded the rules of politics in a way that perhaps some of us, I'll admit I'm quite a conventional sort of person in the way that I do my politics, find difficult and challenging. But, elections are elections. We have to work with whoever is democratically elected in the White House.
Difficult and challenging, Robert. I mean, where do you start with the way in which he's treated minorities, the way he treats women, what he's done? He nearly caused World War III with Iran. That's not difficult and challenging. He abused his office of state to be able to pick on a political rival. This isn't just bad manners. This is terrible politics and should be called out as such.
And again, our foreign policy was distinct from that of the Trump White House in that we do support the nuclear deal and have done our best to try and invoke the dispute resolution mechanism because we believe, when we sign treaties, we believe in due process of international law. So that's the United Kingdom actually having a distinct position from that.
And yet you rolled out the red carpet for him to come to this country because we're weak in the world right now rather than strong to be able to stand up to him and tell him when he's got things wrong. And we're all demeaned by it as a result.
Okay.